let's just consider what we mean by faith. The Bible tells us we are saved by faith. Now, what is faith? Faith is the evidence of things not seen. The substance of things hoped for, I think, is correct. The evidence of things not seen. So, you see, it's in a different category to what we call knowledge. Let's just preface knowledge with worldly knowledge, knowledge of getting facts, education, facts about this and that. This is worldly knowledge. Now, higher knowledge, which is faith, is that, and it's actually more certain knowing than what we may begin to call worldly knowledge, which is always fragmented. You see, it's this duality, dual knowledge of duality. Do you hear how Freud used the word knowing, you see? It's that deeper knowing, isn't it? Faith. It's faith that leads us on, you see. What else do we keep practicing faith? You know, the peace of God that passes understanding. That's the phrase. The peace of God, which is this stillness, of course, that passes, it's higher than this comprehension. Of course we can't say what God is, but there you are. Faith knows. Doesn't have to give it a name, does it? It's just obvious. Oh no, it doesn't, dear, and we must learn to accept this. You can't do anything much about it, just like you can't affect the weather. And but you know, if you can get the couldn't care less attitude towards it, it takes a lot of the aggro out and the frustration out of it. This is what I was told. In fact, literally that phrase came from the head of the tradition that taught me to meditate, because this question was asked. Of course, it's everybody's worry. Well, what do I do with this out of control mind? He said, get the couldn't care less attitude towards it. It's just the weather, darling. And often, you pick it up. It's the country is agitated. It's like this. It's winter. You can't do anything about the clouds, can you? But it really doesn't matter. If you don't like the weather, wait a bit. In a day or two it'll clear, you'll feel better. So don't fret about it. Above all, don't get critical with it. Like the crowds we walked through yesterday, it would have been so easy to get what are they doing coming in, disturbing the peace of the town? But actually, we just took it in our stride, didn't we? It didn't bother us at all. It's very often the very contrast between the circumstances we're dealing with that somehow sharpens one's attention and makes one practice better. It often happens this way. Often the very best meditations are when you do it in a railway station or in the marketplace or somewhere like that, in the most uncongenial. If you put up all your candles and your incense and sit in a cross-legged and, do everything right, you'll probably have a useless meditation. But go and do it out in the street, you'll probably get on much better, you see. Exactly. Well, like most of these simple instructions, it takes time to sink in. Perhaps an exercise such as we did yesterday afternoon is a very good clue, isn't it? That if only you can just keep this judgment at bay and just be still. Mind, it's not a matter of, when I say keeping it at bay, it's not a matter of force or anything like that. What you really do is introduce something better, you see. And then the mind will naturally go towards it because it's easier and better. This is really the way to overcome our difficulties. You just introduce something better. It happens naturally. Now then, yesterday we described this as consciousness, didn't we? The pure consciousness. Now this is the foundation of everything. The source. And see, everything actually precipitates out of this. First of all, or think of it as the sky. You see, this is the indescribable sky. Now, somehow you get the sort of subtlest invisible vapors arising in this. Then gradually, as they come down, they condense into mist or little wispy clouds and things, and then the clouds, they turn into rain or snow or something. It falls on the earth and forms rivers and things that flow here and there. And then along comes winter and they freeze and become great big icebergs and solid blocks of sharp, angular ice, you see. Now, this is just creation, you see, how it comes down from subtle down to the gross levels of what we call matter, you and me. Two blocks of ice, really. We're just frozen consciousness, really. That's what the body is. And then it all evaporates and goes back into spirit again, doesn't it? There we are. So we go up and down. Meditation is really the work of unfreezing the iceberg and melting back into vapor again. Now, what was I saying? We were talking about thought, weren't we? Yes. Well, you see, thought is part of this process, isn't it? At first, it's all one, isn't it? One undivided, indivisible consciousness. And then this comes down a bit and ends up as separate raindrops. Well, think of thought as raindrops, or as clouds or something. You know, little chopped up bits of that original oneness. And of course, and then you see there's this little complication comes in, because somewhere in this process, you see, that's you and me, we turn away from the oneness and become separate. This is what sin is. It's described in the Bible as Adam took the apple, you see, he was tempted. And so he took something like this. See my hand? Took hold of it. Mine. I want it. Just like a little child in a pram. I want. And Mummy says no, and then he gets upset. This is what we do all the time. We're tempted, and so we imprison that original freedom in something called mine. And the other bloke also does the same thing, you see. So I want that, and then we get into all the tug and war that we call this world, conflict and competition. You see, think of the word pure and impure. Well, the simple way of pure things are like those bells, you see. I haven't said my bells, have I? They're just bells, the sounds, all that. Horse going clip-clop up the road, you know, or anything like that. Something that isn't mine. But once I call something mine, then what we call impurity creeps in. Because you've also got a mine, and so I'm right, you're wrong, aren't we? Or the other way around. So all this arises. See, and so we divide, yet again, creation into pure and impure. And of course, impure, or we think my things are good and yours are bad, don't we? But the other person thinks it's the other way around. So hence arises this whole thing of good and bad. We divide it yet again. Right and wrong and good and bad and so and so. So all these subdivisions, they all erupt out of this original oneness. And really, you know, apart from a bit of basic understanding, we don't need to worry too much about it. Otherwise we just spend our lives trying to, you know, the blind leading the blind. So it really is, it's literally misleading to enter into judgment, because we'll get led astray. It's not a profitable thing to do. There's a good reason for being told not to judge. Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, isn't it? Judge not, that ye be not judged, you see. Because it's actually it's harmful to us who's doing the judging. I haven't asked you. I don't normally inquire as to what people's practice is, because unless people ask for help, because there's so many practices now, and I think if you're comfortable with what you're doing, if you can sit quiet in the church for an hour or two, then it usually means you're doing something that works. So, I don't know if there's really much to choose between them. If it works, then carry on with it, I'd say. But, I found in my long life that practices tend to sort of mellow and adapt to your own changing conditions of life. So I don't think one needs to be too rigid about it, but I'm not sure it's a good idea to be too sort of always trying other things either. It's best to stick to what you're doing, I think. And then there's all the other common sense things, really, of trying to live a clean and sensible life. Don't spend too much time watching the telly, or try to read useful things. Moderation in all things. It really is. It's very good to recognize this. You know, the really awful consequences of sin. I remember reading or being told that the greatest saints are those that consider themselves the greatest sinners. And to see the extent of misery that is brought about by this separation from the one, you know. The world, the world is, this world in biblical language is the world of sin. It's the world of darkness, you see, under the power of darkness. That's how it's called, the powers of darkness. In other words, ignorance of the one. So people take separation for real. And, you know, we spend all this money on the health service, which is really just prolonging the life of the flesh that's going to die anyway, isn't it? In a way, it doesn't help at all, because the real work is saving of the soul. It's not saving of the flesh, which is just matter anyway. Of course, it seems terribly important. The more we identify with this, the more, of course, we're fearful of losing it. And the world is enslaved in this ignorance, really. That's what sin is. It's just ignorance. It's ignorance of anything better. And we grope around in this darkness, you know, playing off one bit of darkness against another. And we go round and round, and it just, you know, it doesn't change the world. Just, that's why. Well, let's just lead on. If you think of the cross of Christ, you see, here he is, he's stretched out on this cross, going from here to there. This is the world, isn't it? Going this way and that. Now, what else is there on the cross? There's this, isn't there? This perpendicular that cuts down. Ah, now you see, this is what we call the third point. Now this is our hope, you see. And this is always now, not the past or the future. It's now. And it's always present. And see, into this seesaw of duality comes this saving grace of one. There is our hope, you see. And this is the work. And the more really we recognize this bottomless pit of the world, whose only destiny is death, you know, the more serious we become about salvation. It is, it's serious, it's for real, this. It's not just a game. Well, it is, you can call it what you like, but you know, there's no harm in taking on board the awful consequences of man's fall from grace. In other words, this descent of consciousness from the paradise into exile from paradise, which is darkness, from light to darkness. And darkness is just another word for ignorance. So we read books and go to school and things, and we try to get rid of our ignorance and learn better, and all we learn is more and more of less and less. We're just feeding ourselves with more and more confusion, aren't we, most of the time? Because the salvation is always here, this utter simplicity. Come unto me, all you who are labour and heavy laden or something, I will comfort you, I'll give you rest. Yes. Well, I'm not surprised. It took me, I grappled with it for many, many years. I didn't understand it, and then I suddenly stopped listening to other people and started using my common sense, I think. Actually, again, I found in Russia, and I got interested in Orthodoxy, which is the Russian version of Christianity there. And I found that very helpful, really. A lot of the old traditional church practices have got sort of modernized and phased out in the West are still understood and practiced over there. It's like sort of medieval compared to England, but I found my studies of it were very enlightening. At its simplest, I illustrate it this way. If you look at the light, or well, if that was the curtain wasn't there, you look at the light, your face is lit, isn't it? When you turn this way, you're in shade, aren't you? There you are. That's sin, isn't it? That's why repentance is just doing that, turning back again. It's said that that's really, you see, that's what happens in meditation, because this inner compass in us automatically turns towards joy, really, turns towards what's more pleasant. Give it a chance. Rather like we turn towards the sunlight, don't we, instinctively? When the sun shines, everybody feels happy, don't they? It's just like that. So this is why it works, actually, because once one's done this, you see, we automatically turn towards what's more satisfactory, what's better, what makes us feel happier.